Okay, can everyone hear me now? Can we? Are we good? Are we live? Is this thing on? Yes. Okay. Whew. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Asexuality Spectrum in Gaming, and we're gonna talk about a bunch of fun things. Let me switch over to my thing so I can actually see the chat. Um, correct. There isn't. It's not a real stream unless you have technical difficulties. Um, and I'm Imani. I'm your host. This is basically my channel. That's why I'm the host. But I'm not moderating because I'm not an adult. Uh, let's go around the room. Who wants to go first? Whoever's to my left.
Oh.
That would be me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, I'm Zan. I am mostly an illustrator, but I have written at least one-shot before in Uncaged Volume 2. And I am... Yep. Oh, there's my information right there in the chat. Yep, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I mostly do artwork, so if you're into that, you can find me there.
Who wants to go next? I can't. So here's the thing. I can't actually see the Twitch stream.
No worries. Okay, I'll go around. We'll go around in a circle.
Yeah.
So I'll go. I am Lauren. I am the co-creator of the TTRPG Safety Toolkit and the creator and moderator of Space, which is a private Discord server for asexual and aromantic people in tabletop communities. Yeah.
That leaves you.
Yeah, that'll be me. So, hello, I'm John. I am a demi tabletop person. I do a lot of different stuff in the space. Mostly stream shows occasionally, but one of the things that I really focus on is the use of role playing in both the forms of like video games and tabletops and LARP as therapeutic tools and interventions. I'm currently a master's student in a clinical mental health counseling program in drama therapy, where my thesis was on the use of tabletops and LARPs as therapy. So that's kind of the thing that I focus on here, as well as exploration of who you are as a person through gaming, which is, I'm pretty sure, a thing that every game does, even if no one's telling you.
It's true. And I'm gonna throw my links in chat because I forgot to do it when I was doing my intro because I'm not the best sometimes. I forget myself. Anyway, let's talk about this panel, which is when smooching dragons isn't something that you want to do, what is happening? Is that what we put for overview and purpose?
That sounds right.
Yeah. Sorry. So specifically what we wrote is when smooching dragons is not your cup of tea, being ace in all facets of gaming. That's the overview, generally speaking, for this panel, because a lot of us in the TTRPG stream space and in the LARPing space, everyone's just like, "Oh, I want to make out with a dragon," and I'm just like, "Or not. We could not." That's just me. So who wants to go first? We're gonna start. Oh, I start first because I wrote my name first, don't I? No, John, don't laugh at me.
I'm not. I'm laughing with you. That's a mood. Oh no, I did this to myself.
The realization that I did this to myself. Oh wait, hold on. My hair is stuck in my glasses. Oh, it hurts. Okay, we're good. We're fine. Everything's fine. We're good here. I've been awake for a long time. I've been awake for a very long time. So I apologize for how I am. Oh, hi, Grinding Coffee Company. How are you? Anyway, where I fall on the A spectrum. So that's where we're gonna start off with. I apologize to everyone. I'm a little like scatterbrained. But where I fall on the A spectrum. So I am officially like official like label stamped in my passport asexual for everyone who is an official character. Like that's literally how this works. Real people don't live up to the hype. Fictional characters are where it's at. That's my official stance on where I am. Lauren, you're up.
Yeah, so I am gray sexual, which for the uninitiated means that I experience a very occasional sexual attraction. Um, and in my experience, personally, it's not necessarily something that I can control. It just happens sometimes. Just some days I wake up and I look at a person and I go, oh yeah. And then other days I'll wake up and I look at the same person and it
There's nothing there.
it's not there. Yeah. This is all this is all very strange and nebulous to me also because I came out while I was already in a relationship with my fiance. So I haven't really experienced like sexual attraction to on a like larger scale or like real emotional attachment if I was demisexual to really anybody other than the person that I'm in a relationship now with. So gray sexual works for me right now, and that's what I'm going with.
That's fair. That's like I joke that I make the joke about being ace and only attracted to fictional characters because realistically I've never met a real person. But I'm not going to completely discount the thing. But in 30 years, I think I've liked one real person, and that was like in kindergarten. Like so, like
And that was definitely not sexual if you're in
no.
kindergarten. So.
In my head, no, it was not. Sorry, I should clarify that. No, it was my recollection of childhood was I wanted to spend the rest of my life with this one person, but knowing who I was as a child, really there was this possessiveness over my best friend. It's the desire to claim my best friend as mine forever, and the only way my childhood brain understood to do that was getting married. Like,
Wow, that's an entire mood. Okay. Wow.
like I will be calling myself out left, right, and center this entire panel because I'm a hot mess. Anyway, Zan, you're up.
Okay. So I identify as ace and homoromantic. However, I do have this feeling in the back of my mind that I could possibly be demi, but that has not been proven. So at this point, I am ace and homoromantic.
It's Schrodinger's cat. It's true until you open the box. Don?
And I do have that thing about the fiction being more attracted to fictional characters, but I've been more attracted to putting two fictional characters into a perfect relationship.
Yeah, that's the best part. That's the best
rather
part.
than me being attracted to them. I'm like, oh, these people are perfect.
Right. That's galaxy brain. That's galaxy brain thinking.
Yeah. So I guess it leaves me. I am. Okay, I'm about to say a lot of words. So I am demisexual and pan-demi romantic, which is unfortunate because my old joke, content warning for the current state of the world, was I'm a pandemic, and then a pandemic happened, and I was really sad because now that joke feels wrong. But if you smash it all together, that's the word that you get. But so what that basically means is I only really experience any kind of sexual attraction to somebody who I have a really close emotional bond with, and even then it's kind of a 50-50 shot. Like it's never like it's never going to happen. It just sometimes does. But there needs to be there's a bar for how well I know you before that even starts to happen. And then the same thing for sort of if it's splitting, like sexual attraction and that kind of thing from romantic interest. That's kind of the way that works for me.
If you want to, sorry, I'm gonna throw some visual aids in chat at the gingerbread man, so you can separate sexual attraction from romantic attraction from presentation, like all the different ways people can exist as a human being, but in a cookie form.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like it's a good idea to kind of talk about the different kinds of attraction people can experience. So we have romantic attraction, which is when you look at a person and you're like, I would like to be in love with them, or I can imagine myself being in love with them. And there's sexual attraction, which is you look at them and you're like, I would like to do sex things with them. And at least that's how I experience it.
Beautiful.
And then, or understand it, less than experience. And then there's things like aesthetic attraction, which is like you look at a person and you're like, wow, they're hot. And that's just all it means. It just means I appreciate the way that you look, but that doesn't necessarily lead into like wanting to do anything physical or wanting to do anything emotionally intimate with them. It's just like, wow, you are super, super hot, and I appreciate that you exist and look this way.
That's my entire feeling. I'm going to tell you, that's my entire feelings about Tom Hardy's entire existence. I, like, everything about his physical body makes my heart swell with joy, but, like, I just, like, I like looking. The looking is nice. Yeah, but like having aesthetic attractions get like overlooked. Like it was like, oh, I think this person's hot. Oh, you want to have sex with them or you like them? No, I literally just think you're aesthetically pleasing. I just think you're aesthetically pleasing, which is in my entire Pinterest board. I have Pinterest boards and that's it. Aesthetically pleasing things are aesthetically pleasing. It doesn't have to be more or less of that. Yeah, just because I admire the scenery doesn't mean I want to go camping in that. Thank you for telling me I'm Pinterest worthy. Follow up. So moving on from that, let's talk about games with Ace Rep. Oh, I forgot to find my copy of Monster Hearts. Shit. That's okay. It exists somewhere else. So we're gonna talk about games with good asexual representation. And off the bat, we're gonna talk about Monster Hearts 2. I have feelings about it, and mostly those feelings that I'm glad you tried. Thank you for the attempt. An attempt was made. It is a valid attempt. I don't love your attempt, but an attempt was made. Anyone else have feelings about games with good ace rep? The Sims.
So I want to bring up something actually in the context of this that I think it's really important, is that one of the things that you run into a lot with ace representation in general, for a lot of media in particular, is if we're talking sort of ace platonic stuff, it usually will happen because somebody was queer baiting.
Oh, I can talk about that for days.
Right. So I think, and I want to say that it is worth noting that a lot of the tension you will find in looking at ace representation in gaming in general is because somebody has written something to be a little bit outside of the norm of what we consider like a cis normal relationship, but in a way that baits multiple identities into thinking that that's what they're talking about, which can cause some issues. But my personal favorite example is the one where like you can just, there are little teeny subversions you can do in media just to kind of push towards that kind of thing. The ending of Pacific Rim, it instead of doing like the fucking on screen these two people kiss now problem that every fucking movie does, they do the anime like forehead head touch of like, I appreciate you as a human being, and that's the end of that. And then like the ending of Rogue One does a very similar thing. But you're gonna come up with a lot of what is the difference between asexual spectrum representation versus platonic versus romantic separation, because those two things aren't very well defined in how we approach them in media regardless. So just like, I want to preface this discussion with, this is a thing that is going to be interesting if you're looking for that kind of rep.
Yeah, one of the things I see a lot of from when people call for more like asexual and aromantic representation in media is that like a lot of well-meaning allosexual people, which is the word that we use to describe people who are not asexual, people who do experience sexual attraction all the time. They will be like, yes, I want more platonic cuddling. And like, I am here to tell you that the ace experience is not just, and sometimes never, platonic cuddling. There are a lot of ace people who do not like to be touched and who do not like cuddling. And so if you think, oh yeah, they're just cuddling, like all ace romance is
soft
platonic cuddling and soft and fluffy, like that's not what that is. Somebody was asking about the Monster Hearts 2 rules.
I put an imager link to the rules, so to a picture of the rules.
I think it goes. I think it's worth to like discuss it if we're discussing.
Yeah, we can totally talk about it. I went in because anyone didn't know what they were.
Yeah. But so essentially in Monster Hearts, the whole thing about Monster Hearts is that you do not have control over when you get turned on. It's a role that somebody can do to you. And depending on how they roll, you are turned on or not turned on. And there are various ways in which being turned on can make you, like, you can react to that. But the point of the game is to mimic puberty and not being able to control that. And one of the things that they talked about in Monster Hearts 2, the second revision of it, is that sometimes people don't experience attraction because of
reasons.
Reasons. In the book, they group like asexuality and sexual trauma together, which feels gross to me.
It feels bad.
It feels real bad, because those are lack of attraction for two very different reasons. But what she has done is that if you cannot feel attracted to somebody, if somebody tries to roll to turn you on, you instead say you are not attracted, and you can roll to shut someone down, which is another basic move in Monster Hearts. Which means that the only experience of, or like the only mechanized experience of being ace in the game is somebody trying to turn you on, you saying no thank you, and that's it. And that's like one very specific ace experience, but it's not the whole ace experience.
So actually, I think one of the things I want to point out too is I might have read the rules wrong, but I never read it so I think what it was is someone, like, when you do the turn someone on roll, they do that. The shutdown roll, the way it does it isn't so much like, isn't necessarily also you shutting them down, but the experience that it goes for is that it's like a shutdown that they're trying to do to you, that you're trying to sort of break as well, because that's the other way you can sort of read it is, instead of you shutting them down, their sexuality sort of causes you to back away from the experience, whatever you are doing. Which I don't know, like, again, that's a very specific version of playing like an ace character. Like, I'm super flirty all the time. It's just someone's like, does that mean you want to? I'm like, nope, not even remotely. Like, that's like, I'm just like having fun, like, right? Like, it's just like, it's enjoy, like, flirting is fun, but like I'm good, thanks. But like,
it's a good mental exercise.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that you can run into when you sort of loop these pieces into like the one big puzzle and give it like one option of expression of it, because it gets funky when you're saying that this is the only narrative that you get to have, if you want to choose to do it this way, which, like, thanks for giving me a mechanical option that, you know, that does acknowledge the fact that this exists, but like, you gave me a mechanical option. I can just figure all the mechanical versions of my own self through the other four pretty easily, honestly.
Yeah. Also, Zane, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, it does seem like a very good start, though. What I'm
Yeah.
hoping is that the next game is going to build onto that and maybe add more depth and dimension to the mechanics and how they're viewed.
Yeah, it's a good attempt. I'm not mad at you for trying. I'm
No.
just I don't love the attempt. I don't love the outcome of your attempt.
Yeah. I think what I do really appreciate about it existing is because Monster Hearts is a game about exploring sexuality, and the reason that you have no control over your sexuality and your sexual attraction is to like mechanize, trying to figure all of that stuff out. Um, and it's also a game that has sex moves, which is something that happens less in newer kind of Powered by the Apocalypse games, but a lot of older Powered by the Apocalypse games had these sex moves, or in Apocalypse World, I think they're just called special moves, but they're pretty much all when you have sex with a person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're like things that happen, narrative things that happen after you have sex with a person. And I'm really glad that a game that thinks of sex as and sexuality as like a key experience to this game happening wants to make space for people who don't or can't have sex. But I think there can be so much more, and I think moving asexuality down into one move doesn't make sense because like the four of us experience asexuality in like very different ways. So I guess
Wildly different ways.
I guess the question is, are there any like tabletop games that you feel have?
Can I plug my own shit?
Please. I'm about to.
I'm working on a tabletop game. I'm working on a tabletop game that's specifically designed with the idea that the characters are in middle school to high school, which again is puberty, going through figuring out your life. So there's an entire set of rules for like for relationships or how relationships work. And it doesn't explicitly. I don't explicitly have a rule for ace people or bi people or pan people or anything like that. It's just this is every kind of relationship you can have, and it needs to fit into one of these categories. And like platonic relationships are things, and non-sexual relationships are things. Also, Lauren's entire game is romantic. Yes.
Yeah. So I will also plug my shit if that's okay with everybody.
Go for it.
Is that so? I wrote this game. It is actually a series of micro games for asexual characters in other games, and I am I'm a romantic ace, so I'm not a romantic, so I didn't want to write about a romantic experience. But what I did do is try to have a whole bunch of or asexual experiences. So there's a game for if you're gray sexual and you can't control your when you feel sexual attraction, which is actually inspired by Monster Hearts. Because I was like, yeah, it kind of does feel like rolling a dice, except in Monster Hearts the curve is wrong.
Yeah. Dice math is a whole other panel.
And there's a game for demisexual characters, and there's games for experiencing sexual attraction or aesthetic attraction, and there's games for having the really tough conversation when you are an asexual person in a relationship with an allosexual person or a person with a different level of sexual attraction than you do, and how those games are really, or like how those conversations are hard and sometimes involve unenthusiastic consent, which I think is something that is very common for a lot of ace people, to, especially in relationships, to kind of have this unenthusiastic consent into sexual activity, that I think people shy away from because when we're playing games, we only want to have enthusiastic consent, but it's very complicated. The other game that I wanted to point out was Urban Shadows, which instead of the sex move, it is an intimacy move. And so the
I would play Urban Shadows.
the narrative trigger is, instead of when you have sex with somebody, it is when you have a moment of emotional or physical intimacy with somebody.
Yes. And as a note too, as like someone who just came off of playing an Urban Shadows game, that can mean kind of whatever you want it to. Especially because, and you know, a quick fix, Urban Shadows is a darker game, right? It's an urban fantasy kind of like noir-esque genre game where you're playing these essentially really bad people, just trying to, you know, do what they're doing. But the intimacy move, that like one of the moves for the scholars, when you share a moment of intimacy, you figure out something that they want, and you have it. It's in your network. You can get it for them. On a game that in the game that I was running, you know, in the game that I was playing, God, perpetual GM mode. Hold on, sorry, that slipped. When the game that I was playing, the GM and I talked about it. Like, we spent a little while. We talked to the players. Also, really important thing: if you're going to do a whole bunch of things with playing with identity, talk to the people playing with you, so that they know what's going on. You're not just dropping stuff on them.
Yes,
Number
we have
one.
an entire section on that.
We'll get to that in a second, but I want to preface that with this, right? Oh.
Oh,
Dan?
I was going to mention something. Something communicating with the other players and the DM. I'm in a Girl by Moonlight game.
Ooh, really?
Yes, and one of the things we did before we even started playing was we had a chart that we could fill out information on how and why our characters would be interested in different sorts of relationships with people. So it's like, would they be interested in romantic relationships or physical relationships, and why they would. And it was just a little chart, the things that we were interested in, and the things that they definitely weren't interested in, or things that they didn't mind happening in game with other people, just not me.
Yep.
Like
I'm gonna put something in chat, but continue without me.
Yes, all of that was included in the chart, so all of us were completely aware going in what our characters were up for, and nothing has come of that yet, but it's early days.
Yeah, the more detailed you get with it too, the more you can, like, the more you structure you give yourselves, the more you can play around with it, because the more you know where everyone sits, and that's always very important. Yeah.
I go
Are there
through.
any other games that people really feel like good about having ace-ness in, or?
Okay, even though it's not explicit in my game in Volume 2 of Uncage, Dangerous Waters, one of the characters there is Ace. And I do have her saying something along the lines like, I'm sure some people are interested in that sort of thing, but that's not something that I personally am into. Just, I had her say that, and I'm really proud of that.
So it seems like the answer is games by ace people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
We should. That's the answer. Make more games.
Yeah. And I think we'll have links later on to collections of games by ace people.
Sorry, and I wouldn't say so. One of the things I'll say, like, that so personally, I find it I personally find it really hard to find a game that's like, this is ace clearly, as a thing. What I do tend to find is the games that really speak to my identity, the way I experience a lot, are games that are a lot more about intimacy and about like what it means to be like intimately acquainted with a person in a way that doesn't necessarily involve like the outcome of like sexual attention and interest. So like, it's not at all. Ooh. Okay. It's not at all like a. It's not like.
Sorry, I threw you off.
No, you're good. It's not all like a specific Ace game, but Starcrossed does some really cool things allowing you to explore that level of intimacy without explicitly placing it in the context of a sexual relationship. And then another game, there's another game I just found really recently called Gun and Slinger, which is about you and the feelings and the way you and your sentient gun talk to each other, and like have to like figure out the ways that you can like agree on what the both of you are going to do together to actually do things. Those to me speak, I find, more to my experience of asexuality and relationships, because they're not explicitly about they're explicitly about relationships without the framework of what the outcome of it would be normally.
Yeah, I really like.
Let's see if I can find it. I don't know where it is. I'm talking about Gunslinger. I'm looking for Gunslinger.
Gun and Slinger, yeah. Is it out yet?
It is not. It is not. It's going to be on. I think it's on Kickstarter in like a month.
It's going to be on Kickstarter soon.
Okay.
So follow these lovely folks, and we will scream about Gun and Slinger because we're all excited about it.
I am so ready for that game.
Sorry, because I have a Google Doc for Gun and Slinger. I have a Google Doc for Gun and Slinger, so I was like, "Oh, is it out yet?" And I was just like, "Oh no, it's not out yet."
Yeah.
But going back to Starcrossed, one of the things that I really love is that the rules of Starcrossed they talk about attraction as in not this is somebody you want to smooch or this is somebody that you have romantic feelings for. The only thing that defines their relationship is two people who really, really want to, but really, really can't. And that openness of experience allows for so much because we don't know what you really, really want to versus you really, really can't kind of means. And I think that the game is much more inclusive when you leave it open that way, as opposed to something like Emily Carabasa's The Romance Trilogy, which has a game called Under My Skin, which is a very complicated LARP about people who are like in relationships and then exploring relationships with other people. It explores infidelity and attraction and stuff. And in the LARP, what is crossing the line of infidelity is mutable, specifically because it's a LARP, and people are embodying and acting these things. But the tabletop version of that LARP pre-writes on the character sheet that the line being crossed is having sex, which is just a thing, like it's a pre-written character sheet. I can use some whiteout, but it kind of made me feel like, oh, this game isn't for me, because then all of a sudden the idea of infidelity and betrayal is so wrapped up in like, oh, you're having sex with another person who is not you, which is a thing in a lot of asexual relationships, especially when their partners are allosexual and they're like, I really don't want to do it, but if it's that important to you, we can talk about it. Like polyamory is alive and well in the asexual community, and having sex with people who are not your partner is alive and well in the asexual community. And so I think by not by not drawing those lines so strictly, Starcrossed feels much more inclusive just from the reading experience.
And like one of the things that on our topics are, besides talking about games that have good ace rep, is okay. Lauren, Lauren, can you turn your volume up a little bit? Your mic volume.
Oh, it's up all the way, but I'll
okay. Okay, that's also fair. So talk about games, like there's two different kinds of games in my opinion. There are games that are ace friendly, as in nothing you've done will make me upset. And there's games that are like not ace friendly. Everything you're doing is making me upset. And like there are more games. Like I want more game, then there's a neutral party game like Pathfinder, where there are no rules for romance and you can do whatever the heck you want. But I feel like games that have explicit rules for relationships should err towards the I've done nothing to upset you more so than I've tried to include ace people because the sexual experience that ace people have is so vastly different across the entire spectrum. There's no good way to include everyone, so you might as well or include everyone without excluding someone else. So it's better to like err on the side of caution when it comes to designing games. And that's just me as a game designer saying that. And like, so I never played StarCraft. I know StarCraft exists, but there's like Fog of Love, I think is another game. It's like, do I want to play Fog of Love or am I going to be upset playing Fog of Love? Because love and sex have nothing to do with one another, but I can't tell if this game knows the difference. Like, what's next on our list? Being ace and playing allo characters, different styles of play. Zan, go first.
Okay, all right. So I have played some allo characters. The one that sticks out in my mind was one where I was trying to push my own boundaries a little bit, and I created a bisexual disaster divine sorceress in D&D, and it's just like charismatic, off the charts, flirting with almost everyone. And then things started happening, and it was just like, oh, this is a bit too much. Okay, yeah, I'm just gonna need to take a step back from this just a bit. But I loved playing that character. It was just sometimes the character was too much for me to play.
Yeah, no, I mean I've had that happen. Like I played a long-term D&D game. Let's see. I played a long-term D&D game where Van was Van and Van didn't have any relationships with anyone. Van didn't care. Van died a valiant death carrying off their partners, their teammates.
Yeah, it's like but my character very quickly ended up in a three-way relationship, and while I appreciated that, there was also very complicated and very emotionally draining playing that character. I loved every minute of it, but
I tend to play either outright ace characters or they are not in a relationship, so it doesn't ever come up.
I love playing relationships though, because
yes, it is fun. The fake flirting is fun. The meaningless fluff of flirting with fictional characters are great. Love fictional characters.
It's like, but when one of the players, with one of the NPCs you're flirting with, all of a sudden proposes marriage, and your little ace heart is just going, wait, what? It's like, we've only known each other for how long? And then I'm like, but my character, what would my character do? I'm getting so mixed up right now. Yeah, so that happened.
John, Lauren?
John, do you have something to...
Go for it. Look, you...
All right. So, Haven Lenny in chat says essentially what my experience is. I personally really like having romantic and sexual relationships in games like D&D because romantic and sexual relationships are fantasy to me in pretty much the same way that casting a fireball is.
That is true.
Which is like, yeah. I enjoy, and this, I really enjoy playing characters who are very sexual or who use sex like a weapon.
Ooh, that's fun too.
Use sex like who are very different from me, like characters who are very aware of their sexuality, who are very willing to have sex with people, no matter what, especially if it like makes them like, especially if it gets them something in always a non like in a consenting, non, all cards on the table, non-manipulative way. But it is always very interesting to make sure that we don't like go too far for ourselves, and that we're always really able to kind of say, okay, now I'm ready for a fade to black, or like, hey, I'm going to say some sexually suggestive things to this person, but I do not, as Lauren, want to say sexually suggestive things. So I'm just going to say we did that. And I think that comes a lot with the like different role play styles, like the director, the author role player versus the actor role player.
Which
in
is
that,
the next thing on our list.
yeah.
Segue.
Segue.
So, like,
so like I am usually I go between first and third person when I play games, but usually when I'm talking about sex things, I want to try and push back into third person, because then it's not me doing the thing. Like I have a hard time even saying like more than just sex things out loud as a person. Like I'm not gonna, you know, like even, you know, like even some, like if I was to say like I'm going to unbutton this person's shirt, like that would make me very uncomfortable as a human being. But if I say, you know, what was my Magda, who was a character I just played, Magda starts unbuttoning the character shirt, or Magda moans very loudly as a distraction for you know the other Blades in the Dark characters to go do a steal, which happened. um, makes it a lot easier. How do y'all feel about that?
John, you were gonna say something? Oh,
yes. So like my entire piece is actually very. I was kind of saving it towards the end because I had the feeling we were going to track into director versus actor, and so for me it's much easier to GM a game, or as I said to my players who I love them all, it's much easier for me to run a game for horny people than it is to play a horny person, uh, just because like it's. I find it much easier to play sexual for people. So the way for me personally, a lot of like my interest such direction is very much a mirror of whatever partner I'm with at the time. I tend to reflect what their drive for it is if we have that established connection already. And so for like my players who are like super horny all the time, love them to death, it's much easier for me to play that in with them because they're like they have that energy, they bring it, and so I don't have to do nearly as much work to like make that a thing that happens. I just put a vaguely hot person in their path, and they're like, "It's fuck time," and I'm like, "Please, all right, well, I knew that was gonna happen, but here we are again, I guess, fourth time this week." You know, and that's for me, that's totally fine to play with. I don't mind doing that. I've found that playing if I'm playing games, almost every character I've ever played has been Demi or Ace in some way. In that, like, I don't think about, I don't even remotely think about sex or romance in games. Just kind of like, just because it's not something that I think about personally very often. And so the characters I play kind of tend to reflect that, and I kind of enjoy doing that personally myself, anyways. Just because I have seen, like, I play a lot of conventions, and being really horny with strangers at a table can go really badly real fast.
Listen.
Like, one, don't, and two, it just makes it easier for me to enjoy playing the game if that's not even a thing I'm thinking about.
I'll say the addendum to that. The counter argument to that is every time I play Monster Hearts,
Oh yeah,
at a convention.
Yeah, but the people who sign up for Monster Hearts and generally tend to know what Monster Hearts is.
Yes.
Whereas the people who just inject it into other games that aren't explicitly about that, it's like, what? Okay, yeah. I did not come here for that, and I very evidently don't want the one you're doing, so I'm just gonna, thanks, I'm good. So that's kind of where I end up in those kinds of things. Yeah, as a direct, like, Bees to the Horny is really easy for me to do as a director. Also because I personally am a little bit into local kink stuff, and so I have a very my specific mentality is very service, and so it's very easy for me to match people who want to bring a certain energy to do something. It's just left to my own devices, I don't have that personally.
Yeah. Zan, you were gonna say something?
I think I was going to talk about
director versus.
Yes. one of the things that made it easier on me to roleplay more intimate stuff was to take it off the table. Because when you're playing at a table, it's very public, and sometimes you don't feel comfortable going into intimate situations. But you want to have that character experience, you want to have that roleplay experience, then just say, we'll take a rain check on that. I'll meet back up with you and we could have like we could get on Discord and we could do a chat about it, and we can do a chat role play of what happened in between these two chapters of story. And there you have that role play experience. You don't have to have it in public at the table, and you don't have to subject players at the table who might not be into that.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's one of my favorite kind of games, are play by post, which is a whole other panel that I think might be happening at this very moment. I don't know. I feel the play by post panel is happening right in this very moment, but play by post games are great because you can have like individual one-on-one conversations with someone that aren't publicly available conversations.
Yeah, and I think side scenes, which is what they call them in Invisible Sun, and they're like part of a whole like mechanic of the game. But having these kind of like extra off table, outside of play scenes can be very controversial at a table because there are some people who are very uncomfortable with the idea of play or narrative happening without everybody there to kind of like check in and be like, yes, I am okay with that happening. And that's an important like safety tip. Everybody has to actively consent to all of the plot points that are happening. And so I think the ways that you can achieve, but like, side text RPs, side scenes, for more romantic or like sexual moments are that you have the scene, and if anything important to the story happens, or anything narratively important happens, then you just kind of say, all right, like these two people, they went on a date, they did some things, and then while they were on this date, they shared secrets with each other, and so now both of these people like know that the other person killed their dad or something.
That was a turn.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It was just a turn.
I was going with
Hashtag intimacy.
Yeah, and then people say, okay, I know this important story happens, and if somebody's like, no, I don't want parent death in the game, can we say that didn't happen? Then you can go, oh yeah, that's fair, without having that person have to be aware of all of the other stuff that happened on that date that we didn't want to know.
Yeah. And so speaking of I guess not consent in gaming, that's a whole other panel as well. But having games where everyone has to agree on something. As a GM, this is directed specifically at you, John, because you GM more games than I think any of us. Creating space for ace NPC characters in games, especially when you have players who are constantly horny on main. Please stop being horny on main.
So like, and again, I don't have issues with horn. So I personally don't have issues.
I don't either, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, it's like okay, I get it. Like, all right. But like there is like one of the campaigns I'm running with this specific group of horny people who I love to death. There is a nope, gotta parse the two NPCs in my head. Hold on. There is a gay row ace character in that who one of them has like befriended and is like, this is my younger brother now. And that's kind of like how they've managed that relationship. Is like they adore them and they want to make sure that they're super, like that they're like taking care of themselves, and that because like they're like this particular NPC is like, tiny science awkward bean, and so like
Aww.
and so like they're like this one is mine now. This is my tiny child who I am going to protect. And like they're like those two characters have the potential, and players know this, that they could end up in a romantic relationship if they wanted, if they really wanted to. It's a lot of work, but they know off the bat that they're not going to do anything sexual with them at all. And I find that that's like, if you're just like super open about it, you'll really quickly find the people who have problems with that. And in general, I don't want to play with you. Like if you're just like, if you're like, no, this one has to be horny, and I'm like, no, they don't actually, because you didn't make them. I did, and so
I'm telling you,
like I am telling you right now that that is not the case. And if you're super, if you are extremely, if you're open about it, and you're sort of, and you have these conversations, you very quickly, at least I've found very quickly, you find the people who are, you know, really open to that and will play with that to be extremely open to doing so.
Zan?
I did have one Ace NPC in a larger campaign, kind of like on the line Ace Arrow, but turned out that the PC who wanted to date this one just wanted to explore these ruins of the dungeon, and that was going to be their date. And I'm like, you know what? You'd do that. Yeah. They'd have a lot of fun. They'd have a blast. They'd find some treasure. Yeah. That's what's going to happen. They have a picnic at the bottom of the dungeon in this labyrinth, and that's all that needs to happen.
That's adorable. See, I need more game. Like, as a semi-romantic, I say semi-romantic because I hate people. Let's be honest. I think I like people, and then I realize that I don't want anything to do with people. But as a semi-romantic person who likes soft, fluffy things like picnic dates and ruins, I need more games to have that specific mechanic, like that specific mechanic right there.
Yeah, I think what this comes from is the allosexual tendency to conflate sex and romance as the same thing because they experience both at the same time. Well, not always at the same time, but often at the same time. I like to make a joke that like Ace Awareness Week in October is a whole week because it takes that long to explain the difference between romantic and sexual attraction.
No, it takes a month. It takes we should get a year then.
But I do think you talk about like shipping culture and like, you know, having a character who is okay to have a date but not okay to have sex. Or having a character that when your players hit on them and they say, I'm going to hit on them or I'm going to ask them out, and you kind of have to draw the line and say no. Like, this is a sandbox and this is a world for you to create, but like not everybody is somebody that you can date.
Yes.
Yeah, like not everyone is dateable. I don't care what your dice say.
But listen, like you could like here's so I've had characters where someone I've had times someone's rolling nat 20 on like a charisma check or like not intimidate. What's the Pathfinder equivalent? Persuasion. And it's just like, yes, they're persuaded to do the thing that you ask. They're like I make the constant jokes about not constant jokes. I make like the jokes all day about risk-aware consensual gaming and face-saying consensual gaming. Like, yes, I said yes to the thing you've asked me for, but is it enthusiastic consent? No, it is not. Just because people, other things that drives me personally crazy, and this is like a D&D Pathfinder, those type of game-specific problem. People conflating sexual prowess with charisma. Salesmen are charismatic. Do I want to fuck my car salesman? No, I do not. Why is John making that? John, are you okay?
Continue. Yep, I'm just mad. That's all. You're good.
Yeah, and I think that then goes into like games that give you a stat for being good at sex. Looking at you, Witcher TTRPG, in which the seduction stat, rules as written, is not only how good you are at seducing people, but also how good you are at doing the sex things. Yeah.
There's some things from games and books you just don't really need to model. at all. You just don't. You don't need to do it
Yeah.
if your game isn't about that.
And not saying that ace people can't and shouldn't play those games, but like,
Yeah, I'm not. Listen, Pathfinder is my
Yeah.
favorite game. Pathfinder is hands down. Like, I will fight you. Like, I literally was fighting Amir. What the fuck was I talking to? Amr. About Pathfinder being the best character creation thing in the whole world. It's a great combat simulator. Like, assume all Pathfinder D&D are combat simulators. Assume all your stats have to do with combat. Stop assuming charisma is a social stat. There are no social stats in D&D.
The issue too, right? Like I think that brings up a really good point, right? Is you need to really think about what the game is doing with the stats it's given you, because D&D, Pathfinder, those games, they are combat simulators. And what you're saying when you do that is that every social skill you roll is not a social interaction, it's a social combat. It's a who gets the higher number and therefore wins.
Yes.
And if you're going to play like that, you need to know that, because what that means is that sometimes is that you're not representing it well, because the system that you are using does not design well for things with more nuance than roll sword, achieve number, hit with stick, right? Like it doesn't do that very well in the other world, in like a nuanced way.
Yeah, that's a whole other not this panel about weird rules in game design.
Yup.
Yeah.
That I could talk about for like game design panels are like I was like spitting them out left, right, and center. I wish I had more time. But does anyone else have any? We were in what is asexuality and why is it important to world building and playing and world building, which we kind of talked about for a second.
Yeah.
I don't know who said it. I wasn't looking.
I think
Zan?
we just. Oh, go ahead. Zan.
I think I may have lost my train of thought. So we were talking about the social and charisma. I was like, I can understand charisma drawing people to you as like you're being charismatic.
Yeah.
But it's like when you try and use that to persuade people, unless you have a feat like diplomacy.
Yeah, no. So Pathfinder has diplomacy. It's not persuasion. It's diplomacy and intimidation are the two charisma feats offhand I know of. I can think of offhand.
Oh, and the fact that intimidation is
the other half of
charisma
that.
and not like strength or something like that just really doesn't make that much sense to me. But
Also, like, as far as I could tell, people like get attracted to things that aren't charisma fucking constantly.
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
why is that the only one?
Yeah.
Like, no.
Can't I turn somebody on with my giant muscles? Like.
or your brain.
That's fantasy right there. Like, I had to have to work to do that. Like, now it's just like, I just have a six-pack. Boom. Done. Cool.
Or
I
just,
want
like,
to use this for evil. Like, let's go.
I mean, haven't you ever been listening to someone and clicking it with them so well, you're just like, I love how your brain works.
Yes.
Yep.
There are people I have creepily commented on their fanfic, which is an aside, of how I want to crawl onto their brain and live there because it's such a beautiful place and they put something amazing out. I just want to live in the little mush that is your brain because it's so good. Oh, I got a gifted sub. Thank you for the gifted sub. Sorry, I don't see the notification. I only see people's reactions to the notifications.
Oh,
Oh, 3 gifted subs.
Oh, thank
you
you.
so much.
Yeah, I
Hey.
think there were 4. But yeah,
Oh, nice.
I think the reason that we have to have ace characters in playing and role building is the same reason that we have to have any other kind of characters in playing, you know, why we need to have people of color and why we need to have other queer identities and disabled identities, is that like we exist.
For me, it boils down to because I goddamn said so. That's why we're here. I refuse to justify my existence in real life, and I'm definitely not going to justify my existence in a fictional place.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's why you should have it. And especially if you are an allosexual person and you like don't know and you want to have ace representation, and you like are afraid about doing it wrong, like I think you can start off really simple. You know, you can start off with like, here is a character, and if somebody tries to hit on them, then you say no, you know, and you can be like, no, I'm Ace. Like, you can start off really, really simple, and then you can read stories and games and experiences of Ace people. Like, you can just do the research yourself, or maybe ask your Ace friends very, very nicely and then buy them dinner after to like talk about it.
Hold on, like I have a resource. Not that fudging fudge.
Oh yeah, one did just come out and it's very good.
Who wrote that book? Sorry, Black Veil. Who wrote Black Veil?
Oh, I have. Oh my god. I'm also blanking on the name now that you've mentioned the name. Frick frack.
Not the band. Screw the band. No, nothing's wrong with the band. The band is fine. No, what the freak? Okay, so while I look this up, we're gonna keep talking.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, just have Ace people in your world because they exist in the world.
And this doesn't mean that you can't have your Ace NPCs or player characters not go on dates or not have sex, or it's just be aware that as an Ace person, they wouldn't be sexually attracted to someone. So if somebody convinces them to go on a date, it's probably going to be a romantic affair. And by the end of the date, they might get a kiss. Maybe. Yeah. But also think about, I think a lot of the times people underestimate things, especially in a campaign type setting, things like courtship, things like intimate moments, things that can really make the game special in so many things that you can have at the table. Such as the first character I had that had a relationship. I consider her Demi because I was not planning on her having a relationship with anything in the game, but I made her obsessed with dragons. And then all of a sudden the GM put a half dragon character right in front of her. And the first time I was just like, she probably has a crush on him, just a little crush on him. They just kind of like skip this battle thing. She's probably never going to see him again. It's probably never going to come up. He shows up again. I'm like, she's going to find this person. And the rest of the group is just like, what is this now? And I was just like, she's got a little crush. So she, very straightforward. This is a druid raised by direwolves, basically. So she's like, this is a potential mate. I have to figure out if they're interested in me, or otherwise, if they're not, I'm just going to leave it alone. It's like, but I have to find out. So goes up to him. They talk a little bit, and she spends the next 2 hours holding his hand. And that was their first romantic interaction, and it was adorable, and I always loved that.
Yeah, how do you think you can help an allo like, what advice would you give to an allo GM about creating characters and stories around Ace characters? Like, what do y'all think would be most helpful to like make you feel good about that, especially if they do include romance?
I'm gonna let John take that one first while I continue making things.
Fair. So number one, make Ace characters who are aware that sex exists.
We're not children. We're
like,
I mean,
it's not that we've never done it, or we don't know, or we haven't found the right person. Those are kind of the big ones you'll see, for people, for like the arguments of like, oh yeah, I'm like, no, it's like, I legitimately don't care. Treat it like you treat sexual attraction the way you treat anything else that is like a hobby for people. Like, think about it from that lens for a hot second. Like, I can really appreciate someone whose entire thing is, I want to be in my garage on a Sunday building a car. It's not what I want to do, but I can appreciate someone who wants to do that. If you think about it, for at least for me, if you think about it in that sort of sense, like, there is this thing that people do that I'm not really into, they seem to enjoy it, it's fine. Or there is this thing that people do. It kind of grosses me out, honestly, but I'm not going to judge them. I'm just not going to do it myself, thanks. And, like, those are the easiest ways, for me at least, to start the conversation of what kind of character exists in a world, in a world where you are acknowledging that not everybody has, like, sexuality as a driving factor in what they're looking for in people.
So my suggestion, because I don't GM in very often, and I very rarely include romance in my games. Like, yes, I don't. But if I was gonna do it, if I had to sit someone down and explain how to create an ace characters in a game, two things: we have feelings, we're not emotionless, and we're not robots. I don't know. I don't even understand. Like, as someone who has a lot of positive feelings towards the first and only first season of Sherlock, the BBC special series, and I have a lot towards the first 3 episodes. 3 episodes. I will fight people about the first 3 episodes being bad, but there is a misconception that the lack of sex means lack of understanding and not desire, lack of understanding and lack of, like, interest. It's not. It's literally, it's adorable. Sorry, I got distracted by my own mode. Like, don't do that. Like, it's it's easier. Like, for me personally, if I was explaining being ace to someone and making an ace character, imagine being 13 and just discovering romance, but you haven't discovered sex. It's all of that. Yes, the Sherlock Holmes of Benedict Cumberbatch. But it's literally for me, it's all the soft, fluffy feelings with none of the emotional, not emotional understanding, but lack of physical reaction to doing sexy things. Is that a good way to put it? Like, I understand. Like, I as a 30-year-old adult, I have said, and my mother, if you see this, I'm sorry, I have had sex. It's fine. It's fine. like it was fine. It wasn't mind-blowing. It wasn't traumatizing. It was none of those things. For me, being ace is like, it's the definition of, oh, it's kind of chilly. It's kind of too hot. Can we change the temperature? Like, I don't know how to put it. Like, that's how, like, you have to understand that if you're a GM creating ace characters, it's a spectrum. You can honest to God be ace and like having sex, but not be interested in having sex. Those are, like, the physical enjoyment. Okay, so now we're gonna get into a weird place. And I apologize to any children. Cover your ears. Just cover your ears. You're a child. Just cover your ears for like 5 minutes, probably less. Physically enjoying something and mentally being here for that are two different things. Mentally, you can be here for sex. Ace people can be here for sex. Physically not interested in, like, there's just no reaction. There's just nothing happening. Or it can be the reverse. They're all valid interpretations of being ace. There's nothing wrong with them. So if you're a GM making ace characters, talk to ace people. We are widely different, vast people. We contain multitudes. Like, there isn't just one way to do it. Like, I went from being Nico in Percy Jackson because my baby, he's so good, to, like, I don't even know where I am right now in my terms of fictional characters. I've been reading Percy Jackson for way too fucking long. Nico's the best. Nico's adorable crush on Percy was like, oh my god, it was so good. And then he was like, oh, I like you as a person.
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So my favorite explanation, whenever I explain, so to Ethan was like, it's like ginger ale. So my favorite explanation is for explaining to people that I'm going to date about being ace. It's like Chinese dumplings, like bao, I think is what it's called. Has a C in it. I can't remember the word.
Like
anyway,
chashubao, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I love it. It's my favorite thing in the entire whole world. Should I eat it every day? No. Do I think about eating it every day? No. But if someone handed me one, I'm here for that. Like, but I don't think about it. I don't think about it until one is directly in front of my face. And sometimes it's like, I don't really want Chinese right now.
I have a lack of object permanence when it comes to doing sexy things.
Yeah.
Like, if you put it in front of me, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a thing, right? And then, like, the minute it's gone, I'm like, I forgot that existed. What is that? I don't know.
I completely forgot. Like, until I'm in a dim sum place, do I remember that, oh yeah, dim sum is fucking amazing. I should do this more often. Oh, I've left. And I've now left. I've gone someplace else. I'm like... the lack of object permanence is so real. It's so real.
Yeah. And I think that, like, feels... like we get told, especially when we're teenagers, that we think about sex all the time. You know, this is something that a lot of like people raised as boys often are told, that like, oh yeah, boys think about sex all the time. And then you get the like, oh, girls think about sex just as much as boys do. And you're like, I don't think about it at all.
If I had to think about, if I had a specific thing I had to think about all the time, do you know how much little I would get done? I already have 17 of those things in my brain. I don't need another one.
Which makes me like kind of worried about allosexual people, but that's a whole different story.
Hey.
Oh, and also, have any of you had the experience where you made up a crush because people were talking about crushes and you didn't have one?
Yes.
Why are you calling me out? Why are we calling me out?
Just like pick some guy on the TV or like in your Tiger Beat magazine. You're like, that guy. Yeah.
No, but have you know the worst thing have you done? Here's the next step to that, is picking a fictional person and then developing an actual crush on this fictional person. Because guess what? The fictional version of the person I described is better than the real version of them that exists in the real world.
Oops.
Yeah, I was constantly just like putting fictional characters together because that's what crushes are, right? I mean, you want them to be happy.
And here, the other thing is too, the other side of this, the other, I guess, side of this will be, in wanting other people to be happy, I recognize that I'm an asshole. That has nothing to do with me being ace. That's just how I was born. I was born this way. But I recognize that people won't long-term be happy with me. So I'm just like, here, go be with this other person and be happy over there.
Yeah, I think getting back to games and what like a GM or another player could help me was that I think the thing about being asexual is that even though you don't want to have a sex, even though you don't want to
that's
have
about how
sex,
I feel about it. Yep.
All the time.
Can I return this?
Or sometimes ever. It involves a lot of conversations about having sex and sexual desire, because by realizing that we're ace, we've had to analyze what sexual desire is and why we feel it and if we feel it at all. And so to just not have sex on the table at all is not, and I know we're going to get into this later, but that's not representation. To just not have sex or only have romantic relationships that like don't have sex, because like my experience of like being in a romantic relationship with an allosexual person, and probably my experience even with an asexual person, if I didn't know that they were asexual, is like talking about, hey, this is how I feel about sex, and this is how you feel about sex, and we're going to have to come to some kind of understanding so that both of us are happy, and so that neither of us are beholden to the other person's like urges or lack of urges or desire. And people, when we put sex behind a line, if we're doing like a lines and veils something, then those questions never come up and those conversations never come up. And I think we lose a lot about that's like, we lose that story a little bit.
Okay, so we're gonna take a 5-minute bio break. Thank you, Keenan, for all the gifted subs. I love you. You're best. I appreciate every gifted sub. Also, we're gonna take a 5-minute bio break because we're human beings with bodies, and bodies require things. And my body's been yelling at me to drink water this entire time. We be right. Like, listen, yeah, I've been drinking green tea. We'll be right back. I think we're back. Are we back? I can't tell. Let's find out. Okay, we're back. We're back. Okay. I had the stream player hidden, so I only see chat. It saves my computer from freaking out. Okay, so now that I've gone off on my tangent, I think I'm done with tangents for the rest of this panel. I think we're good. I don't believe it, but I'm going to say it because if I say it, it becomes true. And you can call me a liar later on when I go on another tangent. So meaningful relationships in game spaces. Why having no romance is not the best option? Zan, go first.
It was why having no romance is not the best option.
Yeah, by straight up removing romance from your game isn't the best option in terms of representation.
Yeah. Yeah, removing romance entirely? It just seems like a cop-out. It's like, and it removes a fundamental, enjoyable RP element that many people play games for. It's very important for exploring both your own emotions and kind of through the lens of a character who is not you. And you can kind of explore your empathy by exploring a different set of emotions than your own. And I think it lessens a lot of games. It would depend on the game, but I think it would lessen a lot of games if you just remove the romance element entirely. I think it's a lot better if you take the time to lay the groundwork before the games begin, make sure everyone is on the same page, and then have fun with it.
Yeah, I mean, ace people, we've said it before, like, we're not robots. Ace does not, like, asexual does not mean aromantic, and aromantic does not mean asexual. I think that having no romance at the table is valid if everybody has agreed that they don't want to do romance at the table. But or if somebody is like, I'm really very uncomfortable with romance happening at all at this, like, I don't want to watch it, I don't want to see it, I don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
They don't like, then maybe that's valid. But like, people say that like sex and romance are like a fundamental part of the human experience, which I do not think is true, but they are a part of some human experiences. And to try, like, if you are trying not to offend people by taking everything out except for what you yourself has experienced, that is also offensive. Because that's essentially just saying like, oh, these things can't exist.
Also, I'm going to raise my hand. I don't know why I did that, but I'm going to raise my hand.
Raise your hand.
Because it's colorblind racism. It's removing the thing, like, I don't see color from race. It eliminates someone else's experience. So if you go, oh, I'm colorblind, I don't see sexuality or any parts of the rainbow. It's just like you're completely you're like disregarding an entire existence of people and their experience for your own well-being, and don't do that. Include romance in your game because, like Lauren said, everyone who's ace isn't aromantic. Everyone who's aromantic isn't asexual. Therefore, there's a crossover where you will please someone, except for maybe the sex repulsed people. And while they are valid and they deserve their space, there is until someone says something or there's a line of veil conversation to be had about sexual repulsion, which is not the same as sexual trauma. Like you can build your game with the assumption that ace and aro people coexist in a existence. We are people. We are there. Oh, hi, Nala. Hey, did we get raided? We got raided.
Ooh.
Hi, raiders. Welcome.
Yeah, if you are centering your own comfort
yes,
in an experience by erasing the existence of an entire group of people, like that's bad. And it's bad with any kind of identity, like any kind of marginalized identity. It's bad. Don't do it.
It is it is easy to say I don't see color because what you're trying to do is say I don't see reasons why I should have to like look at a nuance of something and understand why it exists. It is harder, but I think ultimately better to say I understand that people have had different experiences and will continue to have different experiences than mine, and it is work to understand what those are so that I can do them, so that I can exist in a world where those exist. It is much, I think, better to, in the context of gaming, to say we can have these things because we can have the hard conversations about what they mean, how they mean to, specifically if you're talking about like a table, to the players at your table, and having those conversations means that you can get much deeper and much richer into what those things are and to dance around sort of what makes those things interesting to people or what doesn't make them interesting to people in ways that everyone is on board for and that can enrich your game without losing or without, causing someone to distance themselves from what you're playing.
Mm-hmm. And that's why tools are so important.
Yes. Say the tools for a second. But before we segue into safety tools, I will say that brings me back to the Monster Heart 2 rules. Like, I appreciate that you attempted. I appreciate the attempt, and I appreciate if you make the attempt, then take the feedback with the attempt. Like, don't just put something out there saying, "Oh, I represented you, and now you're good. You should be happy with what you got." No, take. You did something. It was okay. It could be better. Now this is how we make it. You work with the community to make it better. Like, so in terms of making games with ace representation and why it's better to have some sort of representation as opposed to having no representation is if you don't have anything, if you have nothing, if you start at zero, then it's not a good place. Like it's not a good place.
Yeah, and I think this is why if you are designing a game that makes sex and romance like a really fundamental point or thing in your game, like have ace people and have aro people read your game.
We will the fastest way to find out if you've done something wrong is say it out loud on the internet.
Like hire sensitivity readers, hire aro and ace designers to help make your game better if you are specifically worried about how your mechanics are going to land to an aro ace audience. Somebody in chat, Haven Lenny, had a really good point about, as an aro ace person, I still want sex and romance to exist in the world so that if I'm playing an aro ace character, their identity can be expressed in that society. And it's true, like if there is no sex in the world, then like asexuality isn't going to come up because there's no sexual attraction. And it's the same thing with like romance. If nobody's falling in love, then being aromantic doesn't matter. And that is a really shitty thing to feel like your character, something that is like an important identity to your character, doesn't matter in that world. It's just bad.
And the caveat to that too being is that if your entire table is like, we don't want to do romance and sex things, you don't have to do it. Yeah. Like we're not saying play games that always have romance and sex. You don't have to do that, right? Like, but the point is know what you are trying to do and lean into it well in a way that makes everyone at the table feel like they have a place to sit and play there, right? Because like one of the biggest problems you will unintentionally do with a game is design your mechanics and your setting and your world so that someone looks at it and goes, I can't see myself in here. And that is one of the worst things that you can do on a from zero basis, is design a world where someone goes, yeah, I couldn't exist there. And what everyone else has been saying is be really intentional in the way you design things, because that way you know that even if you make the effort, you can make an effort and it can be bad, and that is fine. You just have to realize you're going to have to fix it at some point, or acknowledge that you made an effort and it was bad. Like, that's okay. Those are fine. You can make a mistake and say you made a mistake.
Just don't double down.
And keep trying. Like, I'm glad you tried. Try harder next time.
Yeah.
And also, one thing that you can do is you can play games with ace people and go, what would make this game more fun for you?
Yes.
Because a lot of the times ace people have ideas on what would make the game more fun. And it's generally something that's more inclusive. And if you get a lot of people requesting for a certain mechanic or a way to express something, then that's something that maybe should be brought up in any game you want to make.
Side note, has anyone... Sorry. Oh, nice. So, Ensign was saying there's a great card game called Sentinels in the Multiverse, which I love card games. Card games are the best.
I own an entire freaking box set. Sentinels Multiverse is a very good game. It unfortunately, it does one of those things where, like, the lore of it is very... it takes a very much of a backseat to the card game, because you can play the card game without knowing anything about the characters.
Yes.
But there's a lot of really rich stuff in there if you're going in and looking at it. Also,
it's totally legit to write fanfic for your card game.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain things I'm only in for the fandom. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Specifically in Sentinels, the thing that I really enjoy is that the hero that is canonically Ace is Argent Adept, who is essentially the bard in that game. So it's just a really nice, like, haha, I see what you did there. That's very good.
That's good. That's good. See, that's the kind of rep. Like, I want aces. I want ace people as the charismatic sorcerer. I want ace people as the charismatic bard. I want ace people as the holy paladin. I want ace people. I want an ace boy band.
Done.
I mean, ace is a boy band. Let me not even go into that particular funny joke that I just made there. Which no one will find funny because no one listens to K-pop but me. I mean, not that no one listens to K-pop.
I was like, ah.
No one listens to Ace but me. I am their one fan.
Oof.
It's okay. Oh, they're so good though. Here.
Okay.
I'm gonna throw it in chat because they need more love. That's the only time I'll...
All right.
Nice.
Anyway,
yeah,
I think in toolkits, that's where we're going into this. And then we'll go into Q&A. So if anyone has questions, please prepare your questions. We will answer your questions in like 10 minutes.
Yeah. So safety tools. Can I talk about safety tools?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Lauren, you're not allowed to talk about safety toolkit.
Well, yeah. So yes, I am the co-creator of the TTRPG Safety Toolkit. You can find it at bit.ly/TTRPG Safety Toolkit.
You're not even looking at chat.
Oh, perfect. It is a compilation of both safety tools and resources designed by other people to make your game better. So I think the first thing that when we talk about when making a safe table is that, like, there's no one answer, because I don't know your table. So if somebody says, like, what safety tool should I use to make my game safe? I don't know. Like, I don't know the people
fire
you're
alarm.
playing with. I have safety tools that I prefer to use, but there are other safety tools that other people prefer to use. And so, like, that's a conversation. But the first thing that you can do to make people feel safe is like start that conversation of like, okay, we're going to play with safety tools and we're going to figure out what safety tools we want because I care about you and I care about your enjoyment and your experience more than I care about the game we are playing. And specifically for Ace and Arrow players, that does come down to a question of how comfortable they are with romance and sexual content in their games. When do we fade to black? When do we have romance in this game? Do we have sex in this game? Those are all kinds of conversations that we should just have, unless you're playing explicitly a game that says it is a romance game.
Like Monster Hearts.
Like Monster Hearts, or
Fog of Love, Starcrossed.
Fog of Love, Starcrossed, like those, we know we expect romance to be in those games. And so then the question is how much romance? And all of these romance games are really good generally about including, figuring out when do they fade to black? Is it when the couple falls on the bed? Is it when they kiss? Is it when they hold hands? Like, where do we go from there? How do you draw the line? And then, like, how do you move on from that? Because sometimes you fade to black and you're like, oh, we're fading to black because we're not role-playing sex acts in this game. But then we're going to make a whole bunch of like jokes about sex things right after the fade to black or in chat or whatever. And like, to me, that's not really a true fade to black necessarily, unless that is okay. So I think being really, really specific, and that's what really helps with safety and support, is being really specific about, exactly where is too far for the experience. So that's my any award winner safety speech there.
Zan, do you have safety tips? I'll go last.
Safety tools. Let's say safety tools are extremely valuable, especially if you're playing with strangers. But let's say you're playing with a group that you have played with forever, and you have a level of trust going on, and you decide that you want to go a little bit farther, but maybe not at the table. If not everyone's comfortable with sex at the table, just you can take it to a side chat. You could have a side episode of whatever the fade to black was at the table. And you can go as far as you want with that, as long as everyone is okay with where things are going. When it's, as long as the communication lines are open, even if they're your friends and you've known them a long time, you go, are you okay with this? Are you okay with RPing just a little bit more? Going into like the kissing, or just a little bit more touchy feeling and then we can fade to black? Or are we just going to stop at the kiss? Or are you just going to roleplay more intimate moments away from the table? Just letting people know what they're getting into, even if they're friends, because social constructs kind of can put pressure on people even when you don't realize it. So if you take things too far and they don't tell you, sometimes that can make for a really uncomfortable situation. And if you go way too far and the friend never talks to you again and you have no idea why, it's like, this is why communication is important. Make sure that every step of the way, you're like, are you okay with this? Are you okay RPing this scene? Let me know when to stop. And that's all you need to do.
John?
I had a point. That I latched onto something that Sam was saying, and then I lost it. So I'm trying to find it again.
Okay, do you need me to give you a minute? You need a
No,
minute?
nope. I found it. We're good.
Okay, good. Go for it.
So I think the thing to point out too is when we're talking about sort of the intentionality and like the way in which you use safety tools, right? Remember that the people at your table are not often the best people to do the work to talk about what you just did in the moment that you need it. Because everyone is affected by their own things, everyone is affected by their own stuff, and if something comes up at a table, don't just assume if you are playing something that something, if like for example, if it was me, if something came up in a group that I was playing within, don't just assume that everyone at the table is there ready to process what you're going through, because they're most likely probably not. So part of safety tools at the table is acknowledging that there are people you should have outside of the table who you can talk to and who you've asked them if it's okay to do that kind of emotional work for you if something comes up, especially if you know you're playing something that's really close to home that might cause some stuff to come up. Because safety tools are beautiful and wonderful, and for the love of God, use them, but they will not catch 100% of what they're doing. It's meant to minimize the risk, and we can't avoid it entirely. So have a backup plan. Know if you're playing something really close to home too, especially if you're doing the kind of identity exploration that everyone does in TTRPGs and then often doesn't tell people. One, tell people. Two, have someone who you can talk to outside of the game, because it is likely that if something comes up, people at your table aren't necessarily people who you want to process that with in that moment. You need to talk to them at some point to talk about, hey, this stuff happened in game, or you don't. It's up to you. But if you want to talk to them, you should, but maybe not immediately in the aftermath of what's happened, because that is a lot of emotional labor you're asking people to do, and not everyone shows up to a game table, understanding that that's a thing they're going to have to do.
Do I have a visitor on camera?
Hello.
Yeah.
A little bit. Yeah, just to kind of bounce off that point about safety tools not catching everything, please do not just put safety tools on your table and expect that your game is safe, because of social currency and social contracts and people who don't want to who would rather sit and feel uncomfortable rather than have a hard conversation, because we are all, as people, conflict averse. And that's why you really have to make sure that you are checking in with people and building up a culture of care. But just please don't have a safety tool and have an X card and think everything's okay because nobody used an X card. Just it's not okay. Please don't just give your players a link to the safety toolkit and say your game is safe.
No.
Nope.
And also to answer Ensign's question about real question, what do you do with a player who's blatantly disregarding safety tool? My direct answer to it is kick them from your game.
Get out.
And that's the thing about it is, once is a mistake, twice is a habit, 3 times and you're gone.
Yep. I will be a lot more personally as a GM lenient with people who have never encountered safety tools before, because that is a huge number of the population that we work with, and it's very simple. It's look, if you don't if there are people who are willing to try and will fail, I will give them a pretty solid 3 strikes of just look, first time, I get it, you're practicing, it's cool. Second time, we're gonna have to talk about this. Third time, okay, now we really this is starting to become a problem. We need to talk. And depending on how that talk goes, it's either okay, but next time is you're gone, and I want you to be aware of that up front, or you are gone, full stop.
And
for people, go for it.
And also, I just want to make this comment because I think we were all thinking about it from the player perspective, but as a GM, you can use safety tools too.
Yes.
I know that there's a lot of pressure on you to make the game fun for everyone, but if you are uncomfortable with a situation and you want to use those safety tools, use them. Because almost guaranteed, if you're uncomfortable at the table, there's probably somebody else that's uncomfortable at the table, and they have frozen.
Yeah. Like the thing about it is, so this is a joke that I make all the time, but no one has had an original idea. Not a single time. We all share one collective brain cell, okay? And if you are uncomfortable, someone else is also uncomfortable. I promise you, someone else is also uncomfortable. Like, it's okay. Yeah. So if you thought for a second, hey, that was weird. Like I'm gonna tell a story. I'm gonna tell a quick story. It has nothing to do with being ace representation in gaming, but it's talking about being a GM in a game where players made someone else uncomfortable. I was playing a game of Pathfinder, and one of my players was new. I did not know this person, and they kicked a fit because another player jokingly made a joke about pickpocketing their character's player, and they went on a whole tangent about respecting players' boundaries and their stuff and blah blah blah. And it was just like, first off, that player A was making a joke. 2, you made literally everyone at the table uncomfortable with your like very, very angry rant about something that's like about a joke a rogue made. Like, and it's just like, both of you are wrong. Like both people in that particular situation were wrong. And I had that weird, awkward conversation with both my friend and the other person, because it's just like, person A who made the rogue who made the joke was well-intentioned, but it made this other person uncomfortable, and the other person blew up without any sort of warning or preamble, because there were no safety toolkits at the table. Like, that was a mistake that I was making, because it was a game with people that I was friends with. So I thought, oh, everyone will say if something's uncomfortable or not uncomfortable, but like, it was just like, safety toolkits don't, like, there was nothing a safety toolkit would have done to make that situation better. Because even if the other person had X'd out of that particular scene, it wouldn't have mattered, because literally the scene happened and then they were mad. And so, and because my point is, in terms of bringing this back to safety toolkits mitigate damage. They are a shield to mitigate damage in combat. They are not going to get rid of all the damage you're going to take in combat. But if you're running around battle naked, like, don't be shocked when something bad happens.
The shield raises your AC. Use it.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And about a culture of support is like trying to figure out what to do when the harm has been caused, because sometimes we cause harm and we feel bad about it, and that's where John's point about like having somebody that you can talk to who is not part of that game is important. But yeah, GM is player 2. So
yes. Your fun
do
is
not
also
feel
key.
Yeah, your fun is key. And like, especially for ace GMs who have those really thirsty players, like, I know we want to make sure our players have fun, but like, don't be afraid to be like, hey, this is too much for me, so we're gonna stop this, because it's not worth it. Like,
it's never worth.
The game is not worth your discomfort.
It's a game. If you're not having fun, you're playing wrong.
Yeah. And also, safety tools are really good because fun is really arbitrary as a definition of things. For example, I play a lot of LARPs with people who we effectively call ourselves the fuck us up fam squad, right? Like, if we're crying or shouting or like getting angry or upset or sad or just full on breakdown, we're probably having a good time. It's likely that the game has done something that's caused us to have a lot of fun exploring these things kind of cathartically. But you wouldn't know that if we hadn't said that before. And we wouldn't know that, and you wouldn't know that in them saying it. And so what we do is, so like, again, check-ins. Check with your players. Like, hey, is this you weeping on the floor, like, bad weeping, or like you're having fun weeping? And you get to say, No, something just happened that really upset me, or nope, crying about something great that happened. I'll be good in a minute. Give me like 30 seconds. And like that's fine. You can have fun with negative things. The goal is to provide a net below you that you know you can have the room to explore those things while having fun in whatever that means to you, while not harming other people, because that's the only non-negotiable part.
Also, one of the other things, like Haven just said about GMing players, if you can't GM a game and your players are constantly horny and they're constantly making you uncomfortable, then you're not the GM for that group. And that's okay. Everyone's not like, everyone isn't the perfect GM, player, partner, team, group, cohesion, things. The people that I love playing with, that I can't play Pathfinder with, I only play like Mouse Guard with them. Like, it's okay. Like, it's okay to only be good with playing certain games with certain people, or certain people never playing certain, like, I like watching you play games. I can't play with you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's also okay. Also, let's take questions. If anyone has any, feel free to throw them in chat.
Yeah.
Now would be the time for asking questions. We have 20 minutes left, give or take, for the end of this panel, and then I know who we're rating. But they're not live yet, so we can't rate them. So questions, commentary, anything anyone wants to share with the panelists. We are here to answer most, if not all, your questions. Just don't be an asshole. That's a channel-wide rule. Don't be an asshole. That's not like this panel rule.
Fair, honestly.
I mean, but it's also just a general question at a panel rule. Don't be an asshole.
Yeah.
This is the one time I will say, unlike at regular convention panels, you can tell, like, don't like, I know at conventions people are like, oh, don't preface your question with a story. Context is important for this particular thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's fine. I can read your question. I can read your story real fast. Anson, you're not an asshole. It's fine. I'm an asshole. Don't be more of an asshole than I'm an asshole.
Hey, here's a question. Do any of the panelists have a question while the chat is thinking of one?
I was gonna just shout out some like collections and stuff of.
Oh yeah, feel free to throw resources and links. Also, do you want to throw them in our doc, in our shared doc at the bottom of our doc?
Yeah, I will.
Excited.
But so Meta Paradox, who's in chat right now, has hosted an Ace Jam, and I think also an Aero Jam, at least one year. But the Ace Jam has been running for 3 years on itch.io, and it is for some. There's like a lot of computer games, video game type stuff, but there is some pretty cool. It's pretty cool tabletop stuff in some of them, so definitely check those out. Yeah, first Aero Jam was last December. I have a Discord server for tabletop RPG people who are on the Ace and Aero spectrum. It's a private closed server, so please DM me on Twitter at jail_nasegirl to get a link to that, and I want you here. I want you there because it's just a really nice community. It's a nice community to like hang out and talk with people who like understand the way you live in a way that not a lot of other people do. And then I'm also going to throw up a collection I have of, this is not exhaustive by any means, but games by Aero Ace creators, and then that are about a whole bunch of things. And then I also have a list of games, once again, not exhaustive, tabletop RPGs and LARPs about the experience of being Ace or Aero. So, and
I will be making a Twitter thread with all the links to all the resources that are being collected and all the various documents that I'm making everyone fill out. So just follow me on Twitter, or just notification me on Twitter, and you'll get them. So do you have any stories? So someone asked a question. I can't remember who, because I copied and pasted the question into the chat. Do you have any stories about playing Ace or Aero questions in RPGs, in interaction with characters that were handled well or badly. Zan, you raised your hand.
Oh yes, I have a very good one that was handled very well. Technically, this character is Demi. It's my newest character, a paladin named Kaze, kind of oblivious.
Oh, yay!
And basically, what happened was our player group started shipping two of our player characters together, my Kaze and Mavis the monk. And Mavis is a disaster bi, and my character is an oblivious demi ace. And so we just kind of sat down and were like, okay, we're both cool with this. How do we want to play this? And as soon as someone said anime romance with constant misunderstandings, we were just like, yes, that is exactly how we are playing this. They and my character, I'm actually using some of Lauren's tools because I rolled to decide whether or not my character was attracted, but every subsequent roll with the 2d6 determines how aware of that attraction my character is. And just in the last game that we had, they were on a date, which they're now both worried about whether or not the other one considered it a date.
I have a game for that one too. It's romantic. And like I think it's another roll 2d6, and if you crit fail, you don't realize it was a date until like 10 years later. But yeah, that's one of my favorite stories because you played that's the game if you're wondering about it is Demi in Distress, which is available in Romantic, which you can find on my itch.io. The link is
But basically, I'm waiting for my character to roll 2 6s so they can be panicked, completely aware that they are in love, and doesn't know what to do. I can't wait until that happens.
Yeah. I actually had a really positive experience playing a demi-romantic person in a Good Society game lately. Good Society is a wonderful game about Jane Austen role-playing, and most people think it is a romance game because there is a lot of romance aspects to it, but because the like driving force of the game is like who's marrying who, because that's what Jane Austen is about. But getting married doesn't necessarily mean that you're in love with the person, especially back then, but even now. And so I had a really interesting time playing a character who was demi-romantic, so only felt romantic attraction to people after spending a long time, and was being courted by somebody that she knew for 3 months who was madly in love with her, and then also rekindled somebody, like had this best friend that she had known for 5 years, and having her go through that experience of like, is this feeling of like closeness a romance experience or just a friendship experience, was really good and interesting. And what made it so good and interesting was because I had a character who was willing to have those really tough conversations with me about, is it love? What if I don't love you and you love me? And I was really glad to have that experience, specifically because I had players who were on board.
I personally don't have because I generally speaking shy away from romance. I don't play games that have romance. I played a long-term mouse guard game. I played a long-term D&D game. I don't really do games with romance except for Monster Heart, and all the time that I play Monster Heart, that digresses into a shambling mess of 20 teenagers, which I'm fine with. I'm fine with that. John, do you have any, or do we want to move to the next question?
I was trying to think about that. I think most of the ones that I've had have all been like, again, so like pretty much every character I play is ace in some way or another. But again, like good society game. I was specifically playing an ace panro poly person in the game. Like they didn't know they were any of those things. That was just the kind of default way they treated relationships in general, which was not a great fit for being like someone with a family fortune who had to come up with like actual like have a suitable society match at one point. And it's really fun to play as a quick note, it is fun to play characters who don't know that about themselves. um Sometimes, if that's the kind of thing you like, because it is fun to enjoy the tension of learning who that is again. Definitely not because, I did that at one point as a person, but it's fun to play that tension again if that's something you'd want to do. But it was handled really well. Like everyone in that table, like we all knew what the characters sort of what they were coded as, even though I didn't say it explicitly because they didn't have the words for it themselves. But that meant every story arc we did, every relationship was always this tension of like, but do you love me? Like, well, yes. Well, then prove it. How? Like I can only do that this way because this is the way that I know how to do these things. And so we were able to really settle in and talk about the story we wanted to tell between the characters we had at the table, because we talked about what those characters, the way they thought and the way they felt about relationships, about love, about sex, before we even sat down to play. And like again, this goes back to sort of director versus actor. I personally skew very heavily towards director, just because if I'm telling a story with a bunch of people, it is very easy to act a character and play a character that has no regard for anybody else's fun, because the character can be an asshole. But I, as a player, have a responsibility to pay attention to make sure everyone else is having fun with what I am doing. Um, so that's kind of the advice I give in getting interactions that are good, is have everyone be on the same page. Just like, something you think would be obvious but often isn't.
Yeah, sorry, I'm working on that link to A Space. It'll take me a second because Discord.
We've got a couple like super cool questions. So one of them from I think a little further back was, how is there a good way to approach new groups with your personal issues with sex? Um, yes and no. There is a way you should be able to do it, which is you should be able to be open with that with people. There are people who are not going to respond well to that, and that's just kind of unfortunate. If it's a group of people who you're friends with, ideally they would know and wouldn't have a problem working around with you because they're friends with you theoretically, but like that is not a situation everybody is in. The good way is like, if you can bring it up, bring it up. And if honestly, sometimes if you're at a table where you can't do those things, sometimes it's just fine to be like, actually, I'm good. Like you don't need to play in every game. I know, like, I say that as me personally, who wants to play in everything ever, but if a game is not for you, you don't have to force yourself to play it. So that's my shtick on that. I don't know if everyone else has ideas about that kind of thing.
Did the link go through? I'm so sorry. There's so much link stuff.
Nope, it's gone.
Oh my god. Okay.
We will get it to you somehow, we swear.
I posted the link. I think it's there.
Okay.
Oh my god.
You have 30 seconds to post.
Okay, I'm just gonna give it. I'm just gonna give it to you in the chat. How's that?
Boom, boom.
Oh, there's also a question. Would you want to see sexualities, romances as part of character creation in mainstream games in the future, like race, class, background? Would that feel like pandering, or would it be representation? I actually personally would appreciate it, especially when designing games, because then you have an excuse to include that in with the information of NPCs.
Yeah. I'd want to see it as part of something. I don't want you to tell me how to do it. Like I don't want you to create a roll on this table for your sexuality. Don't. But please, like in the same way that like masks sort of started when they did like looks and they switched the way they ordered. So masks is this really cool thing where if you look at where they put in like what your like race is, because it's all like people, they have a pretty comprehensive selection of it for one, and also it's ordered differently. It's ordered alphabetically, and it doesn't start with white. That means white is at the very end after you've read all the other ones to get to this, because though that kind of design forces you to like, because we read left to right, under like hit all these other things before you get to what most people assume therefore would be the default choice. I would appreciate personally, bring it up as something to consider. Bring it, like, make it a point of in what you are designing to say, think about this. Don't tell me how to do it, because I probably know better than you how to do it for myself personally. But give me the option to say, oh, that's a thing I should think about, huh? Because then I get the opportunity to breathe into it as opposed to being told how to do it.
Also, sorry, I'm gonna side and then come back to this question real fast.
Yep.
Someone asked about the D to the Pakistan words that I don't know what this word is.
What?
This.
Oh, there's Elizabeth Moon's.
And I'm gonna answer that question with no, like before my time. I'm a baby. The 80s never happened for me.
I will say I was in break talking about ace representation, not that particular one, but Tarma from Oathbound and Oathbreakers by Mercedes Lackey and Larry Dixon.
Yes, I have them.
Yeah, it's just like that was the only ace character that I had read growing up, the only confirmed one.
Okay, so there's Sabriel from Garth Nix's Sabriel Old Kingdom series. I love her. She's amazing. I have a whole book list. I'll share my book list. Hold on.
And there's lots of asexual book recommendations and stuff that are in our resources, so definitely check those out. But yeah, I find there hasn't been a lot of really great obvious ace representation, because things talk a lot about or stuff that's like really in the zeitgeist, like Good Omens is often brought up as a character, like two characters in an asexual relationship, and lots of asexual people like
love it,
read and see that, and they're like, yes, this is how I agree. But then there's also like SpongeBob.
I love
SpongeBob SquarePants.
Yep.
And you're like,
yeah, I have to admit, yes. Good Omens is a good example of a queer platonic relationship.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I know this is extremely, like, I read Elsa from Frozen as very aro ace. So
that's fair. What's happening? Sorry, my cat is being weird.
So those are some that I know, but I think a lot of ace representation is in a lot of like young adult fiction. If you're not into young adult fiction, then it's very hard. But it's right, there has been a lot more people. There's been a lot more like ace people writing, and people writing ace characters. So I would say the best way, if you're looking for a book, is to find a book by an ace writer.
Yes, and there's a couple. So during Ace Awareness Week, if you check the Ace Awareness Week tag on Twitter, again, I know if you're not on Twitter, it's hard. Or I think it might also be on Tumblr. There's a lot of sorry, my cat is being moody. He's like paying attention to me. He's like headbutting me. He's just like paying attention to me. There's a lot more authors and writers than you would think writing ace books and books with ace representation and writing ace romance novels. which is a whole subgenre of books that I didn't know needed to exist, which replaced a whole bunch of other books that I don't like, which we're not going to talk about.
As far as the answer to the question about sexualities and like romantic leanings as part of character creation, I think yes, that would be really cool because it would give people like a permission to interact with it, like give other players permission to interact with it. But like that's something where you'd really have to talk to Ace and Arrow people about it, because like don't put it on a line. It doesn't work that way. You know,
it's not a straight line. It's a very curvy, wacky line.
and don't like lists are make me nervous because you're always going to leave somebody out. I especially feel really bad when people like will talk about like sexualities and sexual attraction and like not talk about romantic attraction. But yeah, like I think that could be really cool. I think there should be no mechanics attached to it. I think it's just kind of like a flavor thing. But I think that would be nice because it gives people a chance to think and explore, knowing that I don't know yet is also a totally valid option.
Meta Paradox, what is Loveless? Besides the Final Fantasy VII play.
Apparently it's a book by Alice Oseman.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I missed part of this. There's a lot happening in
There's a lot going on in chat, yeah.
All right, chat. I am bad at it. British author. Okay, I found it. I buy books on Kindle. Oh yeah, it has not come out yet.
So here's a question about I find myself hesitant to join games with friends, family, NPCs because I know that sex jokes are so much a part of the game in some groups. Is there a good way to approach new groups with your personal issues with sex? I hate feeling pushy, but I hate feeling invisible.
So we started to answer that, and then I got distracted. I totally tangented us off into the house.
Yeah. So
John answered. John's just like, yeah, I did this.
Oh
no, you good. No, continue, please.
I would like to, because I have an answer too.
Yeah, no, like I am not the only person with answers here for sure.
This is where, so when we look at safety tools, there are what I kind of categorize them into three different uses. There are before play start tools to use before play starts. There are tools to use while play happens, and there are tools to use after play has ended and you're debriefing. The best way I think to approach new groups with your personal issues with sex is to use one of these tools that are meant to be used before play starts. And check out the safety toolkit, but two of the most popular ones are the Lines and Veils method by Ron Edwards, and also the consent checklist that Monty Cook Games put out with. And then you can it's just part of a list of things that we don't want to see, or things that we only want to see a little bit of. And oftentimes these are done anonymously. And so you can just have it there and people will know, and they might not necessarily know that it's you who's saying that that you have some personal issues with sex, but
you guys are so much nicer. You all are so much nicer. I responded in chat. I literally was like, just be blunt as fuck. Like, be like, look, I'm not here for. Yeah. Because the thing about it is, I play games at conventions. I play a lot of games at conventions. When COVID's not a thing, I don't have time. I don't necessarily have Lines and Veils and like the Monty Cook Consenting Gaming like a lot of times when I play games, I do games on demand. If you're on the East Coast and you've been to like PAX, you know the games on demand people are amazing, and I think they also have PAX West as well. They're amazing. They'll go through like all the jams will go through the safety toolkit. They don't necessarily go through all the deep details of lines and veils. They'll go through the X card, O card, N card, taking a break and all that jazz, rewind and all those safety toolkit tools. But lines and veils is like a more thing I see more online than I do in like real life gaming. So I'm blunt as fuck. I'm like, look, I'm not interested. I'm good. Like you can do it with your character and another character, but don't involve my character in your weird sex things.
Yep.
Like
yeah, I think being blunt is good, but if you're not okay with being blunt, or there are other people who are not okay with being blunt, like yeah, just having it as a list, because the thing about safety tools is that you do not owe anybody your trauma. You really don't. Yeah. So you do not, if you have personal issues with sex, you can just say, I don't want sex jokes in the game, or I don't want this amount of sex in the, or this is how far the sexual content can go in the game before I'm comfortable. And that's the end of the story. Like you don't have to explain why.
Also, you can
I think if you're worried about feeling pushy, then I would recommend suggesting some kind of thing like an anonymous lines and veils tool.
Also, the other way you can do it is you can also like gently suggest my favorite thing, which is the MPAA guidelines for TV and movies. You're like, I'm good with a PG-13 game. Like, that's it. And everyone understands what you mean when you say PG-13, not R, not X, not a G-rated game. Because PG-13 implies I'm good with kissing. Yeah, I've done the thing. So like Mike got games. It was like where you write on an index card, you shuffle the index cards, and then you like pull the lines and veils. So it's anonymous, which is fair. That's a good way to do it. But again, that like if no one prompts you, that you should have a way to prompt yourself so you don't make yourself uncomfortable for the sake of playing what amounts to a game. What other questions do we have? Oh, unless someone has something to say.
Also, one really quick thing to note too is that, because we brought up the differences between sort of convention gaming versus home gaming versus stream games, there is a difference between lines and veils and content warnings.
Yes.
If you're playing, like, content warnings are like, lines and veils are really good for players in a game. And I know some streams that have sort of extended lines and veils and X cards to the audience. It is worth noting that the reason why we put things like content warnings and such is because at the end of the day, this is a group of people playing on a stream that you are watching. And because of that, you have to be very clear about what the dynamic for your community is. If you are going to play a game, you can put content warnings all day, but please let them know at any point if there is stuff that is a problem for you. Please feel free to get up and go. Like, you don't have to sit here and watch us do this if this is going to cause a problem for you personally. And that's okay. That's fine. You can, like, open door policy is very important to say, because you need to remember that, like, if someone leaves the game, right, it is going, like, people at the table are going to feel it. If you just get up at a table and leave for no reason, no explanation, without the prefacing of, hey, if you're not really having fun, or if this game isn't for you anymore, feel free to, like, go do something else valuable with your time. Get lunch, hang out with a friend, do literally anything else. It's fine. You don't set up ways for people to leave to feel like, or you don't set up leaving as an option people sometimes can feel they can take.
Yeah, that's definitely. So I've had games where I've had players be like, this was not a good time, and that's okay. Just communication is key. Communication is key, and giving open lines of communication is key for everyone having a good time. And the game in which people weren't having a good time was there were too many cats.
Nope.
Which I didn't think was possible, but it was too many cats apparently.
Sometimes.
It's valid. It's completely valid. I recognize and agree with their points. Let's see, panelists. What would you see sexualities? And we did that, right? Yes, we did that.
So. Yep.
I was gonna say something and I tangented and forgot. Sorry. My response to that was, if you want to see a sexuality as part of character creation, yes and no. I'd rather see romance as rules, then sexuality as a character creation part, or the other way around, one or the other, because I'm not necessarily crazy, wild, excited about race as a character creation thing, especially when it's tied to stats. Don't do that. Stop doing that. I hate it.
Yeah, I think if it's flavor, it's fine. Like
Yeah,
if it's
flavor
just
is
like
fine.
fun fact, this and if it's flavor and it is significant to the
Backstory.
character, yeah, to the character's like experience. But like, yeah, please don't give attach stats to sexualities.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do
God.
that.
I don't even know how that would work, but it's so cursed.
I feel like someone needs to, and we need to state that that's a bad idea. That's not a suggestion. That's a bad time. Don't do it.
When you're attaching stats to things, you are telling people there's ways to win them.
Yes.
And like because that is the default, right? Like, every RPG you ever play will have roll number. Some number will beat another number. If you're not prepared to have that tough discussion or to even think about the kind of intentional design you are, don't do it. There's just no point, because everyone will do it for you in a way that is probably better than what you could have done based on what they want out of your game. So number one, don't do it. Then number two, don't take credit for it if people do it for you. Yeah, perfect. There we go.
I think my orientation. Yeah. Does anyone else have any other questions before we go raid someone else? Because I believe our panel is over in like 4 minutes or something like that. That sounds right.
Yep.
I think it's 2.
Yeah.
I can math.
Yeah. And if nobody has any questions, do we want to just go back around again? Yeah.
Yes, plugs. Zan, you go first.
Hi, I'm Zan. I'm Pale White Rabbit on Instagram and Twitter, and I draw stuff.
Also, what's your favorite color? Because that was an audience question. So, real quick, what is also your favorite color?
My favorite color is purple.
There's going to be a lot of that.
Is everyone else going to be purple?
Yeah.
Everyone else is purple?
Okay, like what kind of purple, though?
Every shade of purple is my favorite color. Purple.
Lilac.
Yeah, mine too. Oh my god.
I like a dark wine purple, personally, but
nice,
that's just me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now that we've talked about shades of purple,
we're real ace here, like real hard ace. Like we have a brand to maintain.
Truth.
My name is Lauren. I'm JL_NiceGirl on Twitter. I'm Starving Soubrette on Twitch and YouTube. I am the co-creator of the TTRPG Safety Toolkit. And my commands right there's my Twitter, and also I wrote Romantic, which is a bunch of mini games about playing romantic asexual characters. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun.
Oh, excuse me, I have hiccups. Okay,
Nice.
John, you're next.
Yeah, hey, so I'm John. You can find me on Twitter at Ryamasa, RY0MASA. Somebody has the original one, and I want it. But there we are. Yeah, right, great. I will. That's so worth it for a Twitter handle. So I do therapeutic gaming as an academic study. I am in a clinical mental health counseling master's program for drama therapy using tabletops and LARPs as therapeutic tools. I'm also a founding member of the Academy for the Arts, for Visual and Role-Playing Arts at the university I attend, which is a research group dedicated to using role-playing through either LARP, TTRPG, like video games, virtual reality, as a as like therapy or as ways to like in like social skills and things like that. I'm also on 2 more panels at Gen Con tomorrow, one which is Beyond Good and Evil, or no, just Beyond Evil, where we're just going to talk about ways to play evil characters and how to do that safely. You're going to hear a lot of the same stuff that we talked about there today in the context of that, because there's a very similar sort of you need to be on the same page process when you're doing that kind of stuff in your games. And then Failing Forward, which is tomorrow as well, about when it's like when failing in a game is way more fun than succeeding. So that's me.
That's the link to Beyond Evil, and this is the link to Failing Forward if you'd like to pick up tickets.
Boom, boom, there we go.
Hi, I'm Imani. I'm the host of this panel. Mostly I'm the distraction. I'm on a panel at 7 o'clock tonight. I have no idea what time it is now, Eastern Standard Time, but like I'll be on a panel. Everything is a remix. Later tonight. I think that's my last. No, I have a panel tomorrow morning. What am I talking about? I have a bunch of panels. I'm doing a bunch of shit. That's everything is a remix. It's gonna be at 7 o'clock. It's a 3-hour panel. I apologize. We tried to do an hour and a half last time and it went too long, so we made it longer the second time around. I make games on Twitch. I make games on Twitch. I stream game dev stuff, game log stuff. Sometimes I play games, but very rarely. You can find my games on itch.io at Margaret Catter. You can find me on Twitter at mcatterdev. You can also find my personal account at Little Red Alchemist, which is my old handle, but I've like transitioned into adult game dev handle. Oh, nice. And I think that's it. I think Twitch is where you can find me. Twitter is where you can find me, and we're gonna go raid friends who roll dice.
Heck
So
yeah.
everyone, wave goodbye. Thanks everyone for hanging out with us for the last 2 hours. I think it's been 2.5 hours. I don't know how long it's been. It's been a blast. I appreciate you all.